In part 1, we uncovered how David Patterson built two completely separate lives for 16 years. Two wives, Jennifer in Portland and Rebecca in Sacramento. Two families with 4 children who had no idea the other existed. We saw how David maintained this impossible deception through meticulous planning, separate phones, color-coded calendars, and an elaborate system of lies. We watched as the cracks began to show, as his teenage children started asking harder questions, as both wives began to sense something wasn't right. And we ended with Jennifer at a basketball game, holding a phone she didn't recognize, staring at a photo of her husband with 2 girls she'd never seen before. Now, in part 2, we are about to witness the moment when everything David built comes crashing down in a single afternoon. Jennifer's hands trembled as she unlocked the phone. David had never been particularly careful about security because he never imagined either wife would have access to the wrong device. The passcode was simple, his birth year. The phone opened, Jennifer went straight to the text messages. The most recent conversation was with Rebecca. Casual messages about groceries, about picking up the girls from school, about what time he'd be home for dinner. Home the girls. Jennifer scrolled up. Days of messages, weeks. Months. I love you. Miss you. Can't wait to see you. Pictures of family dinners, pictures of Christmas morning. Pictures of a life that looked exactly like hers, but with different people. She opened the photo gallery. Thousands of images, birthday parties, vacations, school events, dance recitals, soccer games, family barbecues. A complete photographic record of a life she knew nothing about. Then she found the wedding photo. David in a suit standing next to a woman Jennifer had never seen, both of them smiling in front of what looked like a courthouse. The date on the photo was 2000, 1 year after Jennifer and David got married. She felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her. The noise of the gym faded into a distant hum. She couldn't breathe, she couldn't think. She just kept scrolling through the photos, each one a piece of a life she didn't know existed. David came back from the concession stand holding nachos and sodas. He saw Jennifer holding the phone before she even looked up at him. The expression on his face told her everything. Not confusion, not surprise. Just immediate, complete recognition of what had just happened. He didn't ask where she got the phone. He didn't try to explain it away. He just stood there, frozen, watching his entire carefully constructed world collapse in real time. Jennifer stood up. She didn't yell. She didn't cry, not yet. She just looked at him and said, "Who are they?" David opened his mouth but nothing came out. Michael was walking over, asking what was wrong. Jennifer told him to stay with his brother. She walked out of the gym. David followed her to the parking lot. That's where it all came out. Not the whole truth at first. He tried to minimize it. He said it was complicated. He said he'd made mistakes. He said he could explain. Jennifer just kept asking the same question. Who are they? Finally, he told her. Rebecca, Sophie. Claire, another family. Another marriage. Another life. The words didn't sound real. Jennifer actually laughed at first, a short, sharp sound that had nothing to do with humor. She told him to stop lying. He pulled out his wallet and showed her a picture of the girls, school photos. The kind you keep in your wallet next to pictures of your kids. Except these weren't their kids. These were someone else's daughters. And they were his daughters too. Jennifer drove home in complete silence. David followed in his own car. The boys knew something terrible had happened but didn't understand what. When they got home, Jennifer told them to go to their rooms. Then she turned to David and told him to leave. He tried to talk. He tried to explain. She told him if he didn't leave in the next 5 minutes, she was calling the police. He left. He drove south toward Sacramento because he didn't know where else to go. His Portland life had just imploded, and he knew his Sacramento life was about to do the same. He couldn't keep this contained anymore. Jennifer would call Rebecca. Or she'd hire a lawyer who would uncover everything. Or she'd go to the police. He had maybe hours before both women knew the full truth. He arrived at the Sacramento house late that night. Rebecca was surprised to see him. He wasn't supposed to be there until Tuesday. He looked terrible. She asked what was wrong. He told her they needed to talk. They sat in the living room, the same room where they'd celebrated Claire's first steps, where they'd opened Christmas presents, where they'd watched movies as a family for 13 years. And he told her everything. Rebecca's reaction was different from Jennifer's. She didn't go silent, she screamed. She threw things. She called him a liar, a monster, a stranger. She demanded to know if anything about their marriage was real. He tried to tell her it was all real, that he loved her, that he loved the girls, that he'd never meant for any of this to happen. She told him to get out. He refused. He said they needed to figure this out together. She called the police. When the officers arrived, they didn't quite know what to do. Bigamy is technically illegal, but it's rarely prosecuted. David hadn't committed fraud in the traditional sense. Both marriages were legally recognized in their respective states because neither state knew about the other marriage. The officers took statements. They told Rebecca she could file for an annulment or divorce. They told David he needed to leave the property. They didn't arrest him. There was no crime scene, no immediate danger. Just a family falling apart in real time. David checked into a hotel that night. He didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed staring at his two phones, watching messages come in from both women. Jennifer's were cold and factual, asking about logistics, about insurance, about how to explain this to the boys. Rebecca's were angry and hurt, asking how he could do this, how long he'd been planning to destroy her life. He didn't answer either of them. What could he possibly say that would make any of this better? The next morning, Jennifer called Rebecca. That conversation lasted 2 hours. Two women who had never met, who lived 300 miles apart, who had been married to the same man for over a decade, trying to piece together the truth of their own lives. They compared stories, they compared timelines, they compared photos. Every detail matched same man, same lies, same promises, different families. The legal process that followed was complicated and messy. Both women filed for divorce. Both marriages were valid at the time they occurred because David had lied on the marriage licenses, claiming he was unmarried. Technically, the second marriage to Rebecca could be considered void due to bigamy, but California law required going through formal annulment proceedings. Jennifer filed in Oregon, Rebecca filed in California. David didn't contest either. He hired a lawyer and tried to figure out how to divide assets between two households when neither woman wanted anything to do with him. The financial unraveling was just as complicated as the emotional one. David had been supporting two households on one income for 16 years. He'd done it by living right at the edge of his means, by being meticulous about budgeting, by making sure neither woman knew the full extent of his financial obligations. Now everything was coming out. Jennifer discovered that David had taken out a second mortgage on their Portland house to help cover expenses in Sacramento. Rebecca discovered that David had been using cash advances from credit cards to float costs between paychecks. Both women realized they'd been living in a house of cards that was always one missed payment away from collapsing. Neither family had significant savings. David had been so focused on maintaining the day-to-day operations of two lives that he'd never built any real financial security for either. But the legal battles and the financial mess weren't the hardest part of what came next. The real devastation was still to come. Because now Jennifer and Rebecca had to do something neither of them could have imagined just days earlier. They had to tell their children. Michael was 14. Thomas was 12. Sophie was 13. Claire was 11. For kids who believed their father was exactly who he said he was. For kids who were about to learn that every memory they had was built on lies. For kids who didn't just have to process their father's betrayal, but who were about to discover something even more shocking. They had siblings they never knew existed. Brothers and sisters living 300 miles away who shared the same father, the same betrayal, the same shattered sense of reality. How do you explain that to a child? How do you tell them that their entire family structure was a fiction? And more importantly, how would these 4 children react when they finally learned the truth? Would they blame themselves? Would they hate their father? Would they ever be able to trust anyone again? The answers to these questions would determine not just how these families moved forward, but whether they could move forward at all.